Hi everybody, welcome to Digital TechJoint. In this demo, we are going to show you how to create a web API using ASP.NET Core. So let's get started. We will be showing you, demonstrating you how to create a web API that will fetch a record from the database, that will perform the CRUD operation, that will create a new data set, that will create a new record, update a record and delete a record. So let's get started. So select ASP.NET Core Web Application, say next. Name it as web API demo, whatever you wish to. I set the location and I say create. So we select a web API. As of now, I'll untick this configure for HTTPS and I say create. So while the project is getting created, I'll also show you what I have created as a database. So I am using MS SQL database, and I have created a database as API demo with a table with customers, and which already has some set of records. So we will be displaying this record in Postman using the web API which will be created. We'll also add records and delete records from this table. So yes, the project is created. So let's go ahead and add some necessary packages which is required while we are working on this demo. So let's browse, and the first thing is we have Microsoft. Okay, we already have Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. Select this package and say install. I accept and it gets installed. Yes, it's finished. Then we select, since we are working on MS SQL database, we will also require Microsoft Entity Framework, and will require .SQL Server. So install this also. Accept it. Great. So even these two packages are required. Now let's go ahead and set up the connection string. So go to app setting.json and say connection string, enter, give it a name. I have named it as default connection, and colon, and then say server equals to local database is API demo security. So connection string is set up. Let's go ahead and add the folder for setting up a DTO class. So let's call it as DTO. So this will hold the properties of the table. So we create a DTO as customer DTO. We add in the required properties. So we say prop, double tap, and one more tap, and this is our customer ID, which will be a unique key. And then we have prop, double tap, as so we say string tap, and this is the customer name. The remaining two fields are also strings. So we just copy this, and name it as mobile and email. So these are the field matching with the field of the table: customer ID, customer name, mobile and email. Now customer ID is a primary key, so we will use key as, and then I think so there's required a class called data annotation. Yes. So our DTO is ready. Now let's go ahead and use a DB contest class. So let's create a folder as data, and let's add a class, our own class, as DB contest. So DB contest will inherit DB context class. So we have to DB contest. So if this is not appearing, then I'm sure there's some. Yes, so we were using Entity Framework Core. So now this is inheriting DB contest. So now let's create a constructor with an parameters as options. So let's leave this constructor as it is, because we are going to inject the connection string from a startup class. Okay, so let's leave it as that. As of now, let's leave this, and then create our table representation DB set, and this is our customer DTO, and this this is a table customers get and set. Okay, so let's pull in. This is requiring a reference of DTO class, so it's over here. So we added this reference which is over here. Okay, so we have pretty much finished with our data layer objects and we have finished with our DTOs. So now let's go ahead and work on the main controller class. Now by default we have a controller called weather forecast.controller. Let's create one more controller as customer. Okay, we say empty and we say customer. So this is our customer class. Now this class will have API controller and route controller. Okay, now by default we have a method called index which returns a view. Obviously we are going to create our own method which will use the DB context class and fetch the data from the table, add and update, delete records using our methods. Now let's reference the DB context class which we created. Private read only data context. Okay, now this we need to refer the using web demo and let's inject that into our constructor. It doesn't have a constructor. Let's create a constructor class. Generate so we need to create a constructor class for this. Yeah, so this is generate constructor. Okay, so see, this is automatically generated a constructor and this constructor class is injecting is having a parameters of DB context and it is passing to our private variable over here context. Now let's first create a method to fetch the record. So this will be a HTTP GET request. So let's create HTTP GET. You can name this as get all customers and then sync task action result, and it will be an INRML class which will fetch a list of customers and we pass in our customer DTO. Get customers. Let's pull in our DTO reference. So this is where so this is just a single line of code, return await and context dot customers dot to list async. Something is not coming, so my things have missed out some reference. Let's check it out. Okay, so this is using this reference. Okay, so we got through. So this is our get customer method which will get the customers from our database. So let's go ahead, add a breakpoint and let's run it and see the output. So how are we going to test it? We will use the Postman tool to fetch this record. So once the project is up and running, we'll open the Postman. Now I already created a set of collections for the Postman, but I'll explain it to you the process. So this is a method which I created, and this is a customers class, and this is get all customer. This is a URL, and and this is important. So you are getting a get, so you need to select the proper HTTP verb and then the URL and get. Okay, so the URL, maybe the URL is changed. it's okay. So the ID is changed. So let's pull up this and go here and just add this one. Okay, so the port is changed. So now this is a URL and this is a customer controller and get all customer. Let's set it. Okay, so there is an error, unable to solve. Okay, because I have not yet injected the connection string class. So let's go to startup and let's go to services. We see services, we need to add the necessary classes over here too. So we say using Microsoft.entity core and using Microsoft.entity.sql. Since we have a SQL as a database connection, we select services dot add db context, use your data context class. So I'll just add this reference. So it's web API.demo.data, which is this folder. Okay, and then you say open options, dot use SQL, and then you pull in the connection string from your app settings.json. So use this. So if you notice, there is already a constructor which is passing a configuration interface. We are going to use this variable configuration to pull in the connection string from our app setting.json. So we say configuration.connection string. We pass in our connection string name, that is default connection, and I think so that is enough. And then you use it. So this was missing, so we had not established a connection. I think so it is. Okay, so this was missing. Got it. So now let's again run the project, and this time we should be able to successfully fetch the record in our API. So yes, it's running, and let's pull in. Fine, the debugger was called, and now we'll step in and we are calling this. Great, so we have successfully fetched the records. So these are the records. Now let's go ahead and create methods for adding new records. Okay, so this will be a post request. So let's add a HTTP post request. So we say HTTP post and we name it as add customer, and then we create public async task action result, and we call in the customer DTO, and we say add customer, and pass in the customer DTO underscore customer. Okay, so this is done. Now what are we going to say? We say where new customer, we declare a variable as customer DTO, and we say customer name equals to underscore customer dot customer name, comma mobile underscore customer dot mobile, and email underscore customer dot email. That's it. So we are, whatever was passed in this object will be added in this variable, the new variable which we declared, and then we simply say context dot customers dot add, and we pass in this new variable, and then await context dot save changes async. So if you want, we can return back, since we are using this method and we are passing this customer DTO, we need to return back the DTO object. So return new customer DTO, and then this is optional. If you want to return no content, you can do that, but the calling method need to know that the records were successfully added, and also it needs to fetch in the customer ID, which is a unique ID, auto identity, to the calling function, so that they come to know that the customer is added and they get a unique reference number. So this is a good idea, that you return back and you say new customer dot customer ID, and then customer name, new customer dot customer name, then mobile equals to new customer dot mobile, and email equals to new customer dot email. So we have passed all the values back to the calling method. That's it. So this is our project ready. Now we will go ahead and also test this. So we put a breakpoint, we run the project, we move on to our Postman. Now in Postman, I've already added a method called add customer. So if you can see the URL, I think so will need to be changed. So we just copy and okay, the URL is changed. Now here we need to select the body tag and need to pass the variable. So customer ID will be 0 because we are adding a new record, and I add a name as James, and the number and James @yahoo. So this is a record set. So let's go ahead. So we call this method, yes, it's called, and then we look at the method, see it will have all the variables James and James @yahoo.com with the mobile number, and we add this, save it, and we return it back. So we look at Postman. So Postman has returned back, and notice that the customer ID is 7. Now let's get back to get customer and call to see whether this was added. And see the result. You can see that this record was added in database. And also go to the table and say select. See, this is added in the table. So we have completed 2 parts. We have finished the calling of records, fetching records from Web API, adding records from Web API, and now let's do an update. So for an update, the command is put. So HTTP verb is put. So let's do one thing. Let's copy this add method and paste it, change this to HTTP put, not patch put, and you say it as, so here we are passing the customer ID. So what are we doing different over here is that we will pass in the customer ID as a parameter which requires an update. So we say customer ID, okay, and we say update customer. We also pass in the customer ID which matches to the fields over here, and obviously we pass the rest of the information which needs to be updated. Okay, now what we are going to do is, first we will make sure whatever ID is passed is available in the table, in the database. So we say, we add a small check, customer ID which is passed is not equals available in underscore customers dot customer ID. Then we say it's a bad request. We say return bad request. Sorry, we just say return bad request. Now what we need to do is that simply we need to call the context class dot entry, pass in the object, DT object, set the state as entity state dot modified. Now we just delete this because we are not adding a record, and we say await contest save changes async. Now we are not going to return it back. If you want, we can do it, but we say return no content. That's it. Let's also add the relevant methods for deleting the record and test both together. So we copy this. This will be in a similar line, and we say http delete. We pass in the customer ID. We just change this to delete customer. We do the same check over here, but instead of modified, we say deleted. That's it. These are the two things we need to do, and then let's test it. So we run the application. So what we'll do is that we will first fetch the record. So okay, so James. So what we'll do for this record which we added, James, we will change their email address from Yahoo to Gmail. So the ID is 7. So what we do is that we call update URL. Obviously we change this. Okay, call the update URL. We pass in the correct URL. We say customer and we say 7. And most important, we say put variable. Remember this to change it. And pass in 7. And then we say this was James, and then the number was, we are modifying the number also, and we say James at the rate gmail.com. So let's go ahead and update it. Okay, so there is an error exception. So what is the exception? Exception is customer. Let's see what's the error. Let's go ahead. Add a breakpoint over here. We say update customer, and it's a put customer ID, which is a 7. Okay, and we are saying passing the method. Debugger is called. Now let us check whether the values are passed properly. Yes, it is passed, and the customer ID is also available. So this is a modified state, and we say save sync. Stuck up over here. An error occurred while updating the C exception. String of binary could not be truncated. The statement. Okay, so wait 2 minutes. So I guess I have understood the issue. Let me go to the body and more than minus. Let's pass it now. Okay, so okay, sorry, it's not. Now yes, it's got updated. Okay, so now if you go to get customers, and you can see the customer James, its email address got updated, even the number got updated. Because I had set a limit in the database, it was exceeding the limit. That is why we are getting that truncate issue. Okay, so we have done with update, and now let's go to delete. Now let's change this URL back, and let's delete that record which we just added, which is 7. You need to pass in only the customer ID, which you need to delete. I guess there is some exception over here. Bad request. So let's go ahead and check what is the problem over here. Customer ID, and we see, so we are passing 7 and 6. Oh, okay. See, this is how you add an exception, and this is how it works. So I did a mistake by passing. So, okay, now it should work. Yes. Let's go ahead and call get all customers, and you will see the record which I added is no more there. So guys, this is how I demonstrated you the project. I created a web API in ASP.NET Core, a simple web API dealing with the CRUD operations, and I showed you how to fetch records from the table, update record, add record, and delete record. Also demonstrate the use of Postman, and now we are supposed to call the Postman and check the output. I hope you like this video, and please do subscribe and like this video also, and stay tuned because there are a lot of videos which I'm going to release every week on ASP.NET and Ionic app developments and VB.NET. All this I plan to release, and please do subscribe. Thank you so much guys. Thank you.